A dark, flooded shaft sits silent in the quiet earth. Something heavy rests at the bottom, guarded by deep barriers. The ocean itself protects it. It floods the shaft whenever searchers draw near. For over 2 centuries, this island has lured families. It broke fortunes. It claimed lives. It is a place of obsession. Here, a father and his son eventually made the ultimate sacrifice. Every human attempt to retrieve the suspected prize has failed. Early diggers pulled a flat, dark stone from the damp earth at 90 feet. It bore a cryptic message. But before they could decode it, the water took over. The pit became a grave. To understand this tragedy, we must go back to the very beginning. We must look at the soil. In the summer of 1795, the mystery began with a simple discovery. A teenager named Daniel McGinnis, pronounced Moo-Guinness, was walking through the southeastern woods of the island. He noticed a peculiar, circular, saucer-like depression in the soil. It was approximately 13 feet in diameter, nestled beneath the branch of an old oak tree. The branch bore suspicious scars and tackle block marks. This suggested heavy machinery had once been rigged there. McGinnis returned to the spot with his friends, John Smith and Anthony Vaughan, pronounced Vaughn. They were only teenagers. They brought simple shovels. Together, the three began to excavate the soil depression. Just beneath the surface, they discovered a tier of tightly fitted flagstones. They cleared the stones. They dug deeper into the heavy clay. At exactly 10 feet, their shovels struck a solid platform of tightly fitted oak logs. They pried the heavy timbers away. Beneath lay empty space. They continued downward with growing excitement. At 20 feet, they struck a second identical wooden platform. They cleared it. At 30 feet, they found a third platform. The work was exhausting. Without proper equipment, the boys had to stop. But the seed of obsession was planted. John Smith purchased the land, Lot 18. He spent his life trying to break through those stubborn wooden barriers. It was a search that would eventually outlive them all. The island held its secret tight. The boys grew old, but the pit remained. In 1805, a professional venture called the Unsolved Company took over the excavation. They brought heavy tools and hired professional laborers to push the shaft far deeper. They cleared the soil, encountering more oak log platforms at regular 10-foot intervals. At 90 feet, a shovel struck a hard, foreign object. The workers cleared away the mud to reveal a large, flat, dark-colored stone. It measured roughly 2 feet long and 15 inches wide. On its surface, unknown hands had carved unrecognizable, non-alphabetic symbols. The strange stone was set aside, later documented by local historians. But the dig went on. The men were driven by dreams of gold. At 93 feet, the crew used a long metal probe to pierce the floor of the pit. The probe struck a solid wooden surface. The developers believed they had hit a massive chest containing unimaginable wealth. They went home for the night, confident they were hours from a historic discovery. The next morning, their hopes were shattered. The shaft was completely flooded with freezing seawater. It rose all the way up to the 33-foot mark. The men tried desperately to pump the water out using early technology. It was useless. The water level rose and fell in perfect tandem with the tides. The pit was connected directly to the Atlantic Ocean. A brilliant trap had been sprung. The sea had claimed the shaft. In 1850, a new group of searchers called the Truro Company attempted to conquer the rising tide. They realized they were not fighting a simple leak in the clay. They were fighting the vast power of the ocean itself. They began searching the shoreline at Smith's Cove. This beach was located 500 feet away from the money pit. Beneath the natural beach sand, they made a discovery that baffled local geologists. The beach was entirely artificial. The builders had excavated the shore and packed it with tons of coconut fiber, eelgrass, and beach stones. Testing later showed the coconut fiber was a tropical material. It is not native here. It had been transported thousands of miles to this remote island. Beneath this massive beach sponge, 5 stone box drains stretched across the shore. They converged into a single, sloped conduit. This led directly to the money pit. It was a masterpiece of hydraulic engineering. The coconut fiber kept the ocean sand from clogging the drains. This allowed a continuous, unstoppable flow of water to flood the shaft. Any attempt to empty the pit was instantly countered by the sea itself. The builders had created an endless siphon. It was an engineering marvel. It seemed absolutely impossible to defeat. If the engineered barrier was this elaborate, searchers reasoned that the prize had to be of immense value. The Truro Company refused to let the water stop them. They used a specialized industrial tool called a pod auger drill to pierce the depths of the flooded shaft. The drill penetrated two separate wooden platforms separated by 22 inches of space. When workers slowly retracted the drill, they examined the metal thread of the auger. Adhering to the drill bit were 3 tiny links of a gold chain. It was physical proof of treasure. This sparked a new wave of excavations. Years later, in 1897, the Oak Island Treasure Company pushed the exploration even deeper into the earth. They extracted a core sample from a depth of 126 feet. Inside the wet, dark clay, searchers found a tiny, pea-sized scrap of sheepskin parchment. It was incredibly fragile. It was preserved only by the lack of oxygen in the deep mud. On its surface, written in faded black ink with a quill pen, were the handwritten letters Vi, UE, or WI. It was a tiny fragment of a written record, lost beneath the sea. Who had written it? Why was it buried so deep? The questions only grew. Every clue raised a dozen new mysteries. The search was no longer just expensive, it was deadly. On September 4th, 1861, a steam boiler burst during a pumping operation. The explosion scalded several workers and killed searcher Timothy Bawden. He was the first casualty of the pit. In 1897, worker Maynard Kaiser plunged to his death when a rope slipped from a steam-powered hoisting engine. But the most devastating loss occurred in the summer of 1965. A dedicated searcher named Robert Rustall had moved his family to the island, completely obsessed with solving the mystery. He worked alongside his son in the mud. On August 17, 1965, tragedy struck. 4 searchers, including Robert Rustall, his son, and workers Carl Gracer and Cyril Hiltz, died inside a shaft at Smith's Cove. They had inhaled toxic hydrogen sulfide gas or carbon monoxide. None of them survived the toxic air of the deep shaft. 6 lives had now been claimed by the island. The tragedy devastated the Rustall family, leaving a permanent scar on the history of the hunt. The island demanded blood, and still, the secret remained buried. The pit of wealth had become a tomb. In the wake of the 1965 tragedy, a California geologist